the official podcast of FCS Fans Nation, with your hosts Kylor Neal, Matthew Frazee, and Lawrence Smith.
FCS Fans Nation. It is playoff time. 16 teams remain in the FCS field, and they are going to face off this weekend to start the task of attempting to get to Frisco, Texas on the weekend of May 15th, 16th to see who will be the national champion. Welcome to the FCS Fans Nation podcast, live from the Linen Closet studio here in Fargo, North Dakota. Unbiased Bisenham and Matt Frazee, joined by, once again, Jamie Williams, one of, I think, now the best Duke fan in the world. And, of course, Kylor Neal from the Eagles Power Hour. And we are going to talk tonight, boys, about this playoff field. We reacted live to this sucker just over the weekend this Sunday. It was Chris, Kylor, and I. And, boy, did we have some surprises. And we are going to break it all down tonight. Jamie, you weren't on with us for the live stream. How are you tonight, sir? And how are you feeling about this playoff bracket as you look across the field?
Yeah, I'm doing good tonight, guys. Glad to be back with you. As the bracket's coming out, of course, the first thing they do is you give you the seeds. And at first, I'm like, they gave us the 3 seed, and I was a little ticked. But then I realized the only reason I was upset is because the committee did their reveal 2, 3, 4 weeks ago, and we were number 1 and we didn't lose. So that's really the only reason, because when I really stepped back, they got it right. Look at my top 25. Sam Houston number 1, South Dakota State number 2. That was submitted before the bracket came out. So, yeah, I was a little upset at first, but I get it. It's right. Just go win football games, JMU. When I saw Southern Illinois hit the bracket, I was like, ooh, 5 Valley teams are going in. But then think about that. There were teams that could have won and played their way into that bracket on Saturday or the week before, and they lost. The committee, I can't say they did a bad job. Is the bracket slided to one side or another? Maybe if you look at it on the surface, but every team in the quarterfinals is going to be good. And that's what you want. The quarterfinals on are going to be great. And it doesn't really matter at that point what the bracket said. Now, that all being said, JMU Nation, I'm one of you. I love you. But the amount of complaining and crying that I have heard from you guys over not getting the CAA vote against Delaware, guess what? They had one more win. It's okay. The amount of crying and whining I heard about not getting a 1 or 2 seed, it's unacceptable. Because you were the same fan base, myself have been one of them, that realized in 2016 we deserved the 4 seed over an unbeaten Sam Houston who got the 5 seed. It's the same situation. So now, let's just go win football games. Quit complaining. We have a good team. We know that. Like Kurt Signetti said, let's use it as the motivation. He didn't complain. He said, thank you for the inspiration and motivation for the team. He never said it should have been this, it should have been that. Of course, they're disappointed. Now it's time to go win football games.
There you go, a no excuses mentality. And we are going to talk about if there are some excuses for some teams right off the bat, guys, because the FCS Fans Nation podcast, as everybody knows, is guided by questions from our page, FCS Fans Nation, which can be found on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Join if you're just stumbling across this podcast for the first time. And we are starting, guys, with Bruce Edmiston and Brandon Anderson, who have kind of combo questions about the Missouri Valley. Bruce says if the committee wanted an all-Missouri Valley Conference game in Frisco, they couldn't have done much better. And Brandon Anderson says, how the heck did the Valley get 5 teams in? So if you look across this 16-team playoff field, the big crazy reaction that everybody has right now is the Valley has 5 spots. Kylor, take it away, my man. You had some initial thoughts on our live stream. What is your reaction for Brandon and Bruce about the Valley getting 5 spots in this playoff field?
So I kind of disagree a little bit with Jamie said on teams. They were playing in for a playoff spot anyway, and they lose. Well, in my opinion, Southern Illinois already lost the playoff spot. Missouri State already lost the playoff spot because of how many losses they had. The committee said they're going to take the fall into account. Well, they took it into account for JSU. They gave JSU a seed because of their fall resume, which was impressive. Obviously, they forgot all about fall resume and they gave Missouri State a bid. Missouri State has 3 FCS losses. They also have not played South Dakota State. They also have not played North Dakota. They only have played one of the top 3 teams in the Valley and they got beat 25-0. You can't tell me they deserve an actual playoff bid when they have 3 FCS losses. They didn't play the top 2 teams in the Valley. And then the only top team they played in the Valley, they got beat 25-0. I think it is, excuse my language, horse poo-poo. It's horse poo-poo that the Valley got 5 teams, man. Now, here's the thing. Do I think that 5 Valley teams are good enough to be in the playoffs? Absolutely. Do I think there are teams that are in the playoffs that are worse than Missouri State and Southern Illinois? Absolutely. But because we have auto bids.
Oh, looks like we got Kylor spinning here a little bit. Jamie, he kind of he's putting down exactly the groundwork for what people are saying on social media about the Missouri Valley and the current issues with the committee putting up 5 teams. What is your pushback just kind of hearing Kylor initially about those 5 teams, which you right now think that was the right call, man? What do you think?
I mean, I understand. I mean, I don't think he's wrong, but if you're going to take out Southern Illinois, you're going to take out Missouri State, which is fine. Who the heck else deserved a bid? East Tennessee State at 4-2, I think maybe has the best argument. They beat their conference champion. They lost a couple of games from their schedule because of opt-outs and COVID and all that. So do they have a little bit of argument? Maybe at 4-2. Richmond, at first, I was like, maybe Richmond's in the bracket, but 3 wins, 2 of them against Elon, 1 against William & Mary, and they were embarrassed against JMU. JMU beat the brakes off of them.
Right. Is this where you kind of look at it? So I totally concede the Valley argument, and then I can see somebody who hates the bias that is involved in the Missouri Valley and how they're upset about things. So let me go into that a little deeper. The argument I made on the live stream was like, okay, well, the Missouri Valley teams that are in have playoff wins. So like Southern Illinois or Missouri State beat Southern Illinois. Southern Illinois beat NDSU. So they have a playoff win. That's why they're better than ETSU on the resume schedule. But I can totally see how somebody goes, that's completely based off a singular scope mindset of what the Missouri Valley is. Like that's somebody saying, I think the Missouri Valley has 5 playoff teams, so it's a bunch of playoff teams beating playoff teams, and I don't think anybody else is a playoff team. You know what I mean? It's tough to say when you're considering the 4th, 5th team a playoff team, and somebody in the OVC who's second place doesn't have a shot. So, man, I can see both sides of the argument. Kylor, I think we have you back if you'd like to finish your thoughts there about why the Valley doesn't deserve those 5 teams.
Yeah, so sorry about that. I just said, hey, you're kicked out. And I was like, man, Matt really hates when I talk bad about the Valley. He boots me.
Hey, I got to say, before you keep going, I have always been a non-Valley defender in the playoffs. The biased Bison fan in me. Why would I want to face opponents that know us best? I hope they all lose early and the Bison don't see any Valley teams in the playoffs. So
Exactly.
the less, the better. That's how I feel.
Well, let me just, because I don't know what you said after I got booted out because you kicked me out because I, down talked the Valley. But for one, when I came in, I heard, Missouri State has a playoff team because they beat Southern Illinois. Well, is Southern Illinois really truly a playoff team? They're only a playoff team because they made the playoffs.
That was the question.
In my opinion, they shouldn't have been a playoff team because they don't have the actual resume. They have 1 good win. And I hate the argument on, oh, guess what? They have 4 ranked wins. UNI is trash. So, Illinois State is trash. All these teams, their only good win they have is North Dakota State. And that is a phenomenal win. That is a playoff win. I get it. But 16 teams, 5 from 1 conference, I think it's not doing anyone any favors, especially when there's not a big, out of conference schedule. Missouri State lost 2 games to the Southland. I mean, that's their out of conference schedule. And the Southland, UCA wasn't even the number 1 team in the Southland. They already lost in the OOC. It's not like they beat or lost to Sam Houston. They lost to UCA, which probably wasn't getting past Sam Houston this year. But again, like I was saying before I got cut off, it's not me saying that those 5 Valley teams aren't playoff teams. I think the Valley could go 4-1, and the only game they lose in round one is against another Valley team, because I actually think they match up well with Weber State. I think Southern Illinois can beat Weber State. I think North Dakota State can absolutely beat Eastern Washington. But since we have auto bids and there's 10 champs, you're never getting the best 16 teams in there. So I think you have to eliminate some of them. And I just don't agree with putting 5 in there, even if maybe they are a part of the 16 best teams.
And I think it goes back to, you said, the ranked at the time wins is something I posted today. The ranked at the time to me should mean very little to nothing. I said 0. Okay, I'll concede that, okay, a team gets 6 guys hurt and they drop out. But in what world is UNI ranked at the time, Illinois State ranked at the time, a good win? It's not. And that's kind of the point I was trying to make when I said a ranked win at the time means 0.
Yeah.
And I think because all those Valley teams, the voters, of which I'm one, like those teams because they've also historically proven to be that good, but they're not that good this spring, especially those 2 that I just mentioned. So that ranked at the time should mean nothing. At the time of the playoffs, it's where are these teams ranked when the committee goes and looks at the resume at the time that they're building the bracket. The UNI win, the Illinois State win means nothing. The Elon win for Davidson because they were ranked. That's another good example. It means nothing.
It's going to be interesting to see how it plays out because hindsight is going to give us our answer. Either the Valley's going to go 4-1 or 3-2 this weekend. And you're like, oh, okay, I see this, and maybe their one loss is close. Or Eastern's going to beat NDSU, and SIU is going to lose to Weber, and South Dakota State's going to win this weekend. But you're going to go, wow, there you go. Valley didn't deserve it. And rolling from that point, guys, because I know you have more points to make on this, but I'm just going to get the questions out there to continue to guide it because they're great. We have a good setup tonight from our fans. Joe Gass says, name a team that you would have left at home and give a replacement. And Patrick Frake says, what team got shafted the worst, Weber State, VMI, or a bubble team that didn't get in? So he's asking about the seeding in comparison to who was in and out. So who do you think? So we're talking about these 5 Valley teams. Who could have replaced a Missouri State or an SIU? What do you think there, Kylor?
So I think, unfortunately, UC Davis opted out because they had a couple games canceled, and they were like, hey, if we're only going to be a bubble fringe playoff team, we're not going to keep practicing for the next 3 weeks to only maybe get sent home where we don't have a game. UC Davis is the highest ranked team that is out of the playoffs. They're higher ranked than Southern Illinois. Unfortunately, that was a UC Davis decision to leave. So I'm not going to fault Southern Illinois for maybe potentially taking their place. But I think, you had Richmond, who was ranked above Southern Illinois, and all of this stuff right before Southern Illinois beat a non-playoff team in the last minute at home, where Richmond played the number 1 team in the polls, and they have 1 loss. I think you could put Richmond in. I think you could put a couple teams in over them. And then as of who got shafted, I think it is Weber State. Unfortunately, stylistically, I think Southern Illinois can beat Weber State. I think they actually got a tough draw. And if you were talking about, Jamie in the beginning said, hey, the seeds were all right. If you take out the names, Weber's resume is 100% better than James Madison's. They have a better strength of schedule. They have a better win. Every single thing about Weber is a better strength of schedule than James Madison. But if you put in the names, you're not having Weber over James Madison, because why would you? I wouldn't. So, there's some of the things I think out of everyone in the playoffs, Weber got shafted the most because they got a team that they're probably, I'm going to have losing against, and they probably should have been a seed.
And I'm going to go with we're on the same wavelength there, Kylor. I'm going to go with the replacement question, combo shafted question with East Tennessee State, because if you look at their resume, number 1, Chattanooga opted out of the spring season. They would have got them at home this last weekend for 1 final game, and maybe they lose, but whatever. It's 1 more game to add to the resume. They beat Samford, who, if you saw the committee's thing, Samford was one of the last 4 teams out from the committee of all things, and ETSU beat them. Their only losses were a 4-point loss to Furman, and Furman was a ranked team for the majority of the spring. They lost to Mercer, and Mercer was also one of those teams where people were like, oh, fringe playoff. Besides that, though, they beat Samford, who was last 4 in. They beat VMI, who's the auto bid, by 4 points. And they had to go to VMI to get that victory. And they had a record of 4-2. So if you're going to replace for me, Joe, if you're going to replace Missouri Valley, one of those 5 squads, I would have put East Tennessee State in. And shout out to Jason Grooms, our bracketologist from last week. He kind of exposed that to me when he put his prediction out there. So I think ETSU got the shaft. Jamie, what do you think about Kylor there, man? Do you think JMU got a hookup in comparison to Weber?
I mean, resume-wise, yeah, probably so. But, we were also the number 1 team in the country, I say number 1 team in the country, but that's what the committee had. They had us at 1. Are they really going to drop us all the way to 5, 6, 7? No.
Nope.
As far as I agree with you on East Tennessee State, I think you reasoned that out real well, so I don't need to hit back at that. The team that I kind of feel like got shafted is Sam Houston. Yeah, they got the 2 seed, but what's their reward? Monmouth's better than you think. They're going to win that game. But then their reward is either Eastern Washington or North Dakota State. And then their reward, if they win that game, is either North Dakota or James Madison. God bless them. If they get to Frisco, they've earned every bit of it.
Yeah, comparison to South Dakota State, who's the 1 seed, which is, how tournaments kind of should work. Boy, that right side of the bracket is brutal. I call it the nipping at NDSU heels side of the bracket. Everyone who's nipped at NDSU's heels over the last decade exists on the right side. Here's Eastern and Sam Houston and James Madison. So, I tell Bison fans, I'm like, hey, if we make it to Frisco, it's likely you play all 3 of those giant powerhouses, and then you face rival South Dakota State. I mean, good luck with that. Holy moly. It's going to be interesting. And that flows even better into our next question. Our fans set this up, guys. It was amazing, our questions this week. Keeping this conversation going, Jacob Martinez says, will there be more or less parity than usual? The top teams have all looked vulnerable at some point, but the bubble also was really thin. So what do you see? Jamie, do you see a lot of upsets? We're going to make predictions of the entire first round games at the end of the podcast, but do you see there being more parity and upsets and chaos? Or are we just going to see who's supposed to win after this first round, man?
I mean, look at what the brackets are set up. Look how the quarterfinals are set up. My guess is for your quarterfinals, you're going to have, guess what? CAA team, Big Sky team, Valley team, and then you're going to have Jacksonville State and Sam Houston, who have been on the edge of crashing the party for the last decade. So no, we're going to see the same thing we've always seen. But the only difference is, can Jacksonville State and can Sam Houston get that win over a CAA team, a Valley team, a Big Sky team? We'll
Good
see.
point.
But no, parity. No, I don't think this is the year that anybody jumps up. Tell me who's gonna jump up. I don't see one other than the quarterfinals are gonna be great. Quarterfinals are gonna be great, but it's the same teams.
I'm with you, Jamie. I don't think there's a lot of mystery in the first round. I was talking with my buddies last night, and I'm like, all right, I think there's 3 games where you go, maybe. And one of those I don't really agree with. So personally, I think there's 2 where I'm like, we'll see how it goes. The rest, I think, are straightforward. Kylor, agree? Or for Mr. Jacob Martinez, do you think there's going to be some parity come round 2 and 3?
Well, I got to give Sam Houston a little credit. Jamie said, can Sam Houston beat a Big Sky team? Absolutely. That's all they do. They only beat Big Sky teams. I mean, if you look at the resume of Sam Houston the last 15 years, anytime they play a Big Sky team in postseason, they win. So absolutely, Sam Houston can beat a Big Sky team in the regular season. Maybe not, because we shut him out by 40 points last time we played. But overall, the bracket doesn't even look like there's parity. These are, outside of Davidson with San Diego, the bracket looks kind of how you would imagine a bracket to look like, besides maybe one extra Valley team in Sacred Heart. Other
VMI.
than that, I don't think, well, that's true. VMI too.
First
appearance, but it is what it is. But overall, the bracket does not have much parity to begin with. We kind of thought every single week, we're like, so much chaos, but it's going to eventually even itself out. Well, it totally did with the bracket. And I don't see a lot of parity besides, I think, the Big Sky champs probably going down week 1. That's kind of the only thing I'm seeing.
And Victor Jr., who is a Sam Houston fan, he has a hot take, which is what we're discussing right now. He says, despite calls for the season's champion to have an asterisk next to it, wouldn't you say whoever comes out of the bottom bracket will have earned it? Agree or disagree? And he's a Sam Houston fan. So Jamie, just like you said, does Sam Houston have that toughest route of these teams right now?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, just think back to what I just said of who they've got to play. And like I said, you look at, it's a Big Sky, Monmouth, whatever. they're not a slouch. They still have a good offense. That I don't know how much defense they're going to play. I think Sam Houston probably handles them. I mean, Monmouth ran past Holy Cross in 2019, and then they came to Harrisonburg, got off to a nice little start. It was 21-21, and then it wound up 65-21 or whatever it was. But we scored on every drive. And that's probably similar to what you might see. It might be a little closer, but Sam will win there. But after that, it's murderer's row. And it's the who's who of the FCS of the last decade.
I don't think a home game is safe. And a fun fact for Sam Houston at Bauer Stadium in the playoffs, they are undefeated. The Bearcats have never lost at home in the playoffs. And Kylor, is that murderer's row down there? And, let's expand it a little more. If you're looking at just the right side, which is North Dakota State versus Eastern, and Sam versus Monmouth, and UND versus Missouri State, and James Madison versus VMI, top part there or bottom part? Which one's the toughest of the tough there, Kylor?
The toughest of the tough is, in my opinion, the bottom, and I think Eastern Washington has the toughest road to the finals out of any team in the whole bracket. For one, they're on the road. And sure, North Dakota State doesn't look like the same North Dakota State as old, but even when they have a couple down games in the regular season, it's still North Dakota State in the playoffs. I mean, we can't count them out till we actually see them lose a couple games. So if you look at the Eastern Washington's road specifically, okay, let's say somehow we beat North Dakota State. We got to go Sam Houston. We got to travel on the road all the way down to Texas. Mm-hmm. We got to beat Sam Houston, probably the best offense we will see all year. Then after that, we might have to play James Madison. These are the three other teams that are potentially ranked at Eastern Washington's level or above Eastern Washington's level in the last decade. Those are the four top teams of the last decade. If you're talking about who's got the toughest road, 100% Eastern Washington on paper right now has the toughest road, and it's all on the road.
And all three of those destinations that you have to go to are three of the toughest places to win games over the last amount of time. Man. I mean, it's crazy. If Eastern gets there, EB3, baby.
EB3, baby.
Jamie, as a Dukes fan, do you feel like your top side is a little more favorable? Would you rather see a UND or Missouri State starting with VMI, or would you rather maybe start with a Monmouth and then get your Eastern or North Dakota State in the quarters? Are you happy up there at the 3, or would you rather be the 2?
I'm fine with the 3. I mean, why the hell would I want to face Eastern Washington or North Dakota State in the second round?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think we've been saying it the whole season on the podcast, or I know Kylor has. North Dakota on the road is not North Dakota at home. So go ahead and win at the Alaris Center. Come on out to Harrisonburg and Bridgeforth, and let's see what you can do.
There you go. Interesting. And guys, this just keeps on flowing perfectly. Well, Scott. Oh, it's Kylor. Go ahead, man.
And I was going to say, if you look at it, North Dakota hasn't even played in a month. Missouri State could actually beat North Dakota. Like, you might get a very easy top half of I think actually in the top half of the bracket, JMU probably has the easiest section. It's still murderer's row on the whole right side completely.
Right. And that's a fun fact from Bill New, one of our fans on the page. He says, did anyone else notice that UND was scheduled to play Missouri State twice? And it was canceled twice because of COVID protocols. And now they end up in the playoffs. So third time's the charm. Cool fun fact there from Bill, which we appreciate. Guys, moving a little bit to the left side of the bracket there. Scott Moody, awesome Dukes fan, says, did Jacksonville State as a number 4 seed get a more favorable draw in the first 2 rounds than the 2 and 3s? Obviously, we think the toughest side's on the right, but is that the biggest hookup down there at the last seed, number 4, bottom left, with Delaware taking on Sacred Heart and Jacksonville State taking on Davidson? What do you think, Jamie? Is that the easy one down there?
If you're looking at the second round, because I think that was his specific question, no, because they have an easier first round game because they should run over Davidson pretty easily. But I guarantee you, when you look at the bracket picks that you're going to do for your pool, you're going to have 50-50 Delaware, Jacksonville State, if not more people rooting for Delaware, or not rooting, but picking Delaware, because they still want Jacksonville State to prove it in the playoffs. And I believe, Kylor, correct me if I'm wrong, they still haven't beat one of those 3 conferences in the playoff game. So I think, no, they don't have the most difficult first and second round. I mean, the easiest. I think that might, like Kylor said, it might be JMU, or maybe it's probably South Dakota State, but we'll see. But I don't think Jacksonville State is cruising to anything. They're going to have to earn it after the first round, just like everybody else.
to quote Brandon Owens from Cocky Nation, Jacksonville State better not lose, especially round one, being a seed, because they kind of have this reputation to lose as a seed. You lose to Davidson, oh my goodness, Bruce and Bob, you guys take too much torture that's not even deserved, and it's just going to get worse. So, Cocky Nation, you better beat Davidson, but everybody's going to doubt Jacksonville State because Delaware is going to be Sacred Heart. Everybody will doubt JSU at home against Delaware because Delaware is part of the CAA, Big Sky, Missouri Valley, a conference in the playoffs Jacksonville State has never beaten. And some people will argue that Delaware should have been a ranked team. They should have been ranked/seeded team in a top 5. So I don't think there's going to be a lot of confidence in Jacksonville State in that quarterfinal team, and we're going to have to see how it plays out. But what do you think, man? Do you have confidence down there in the Gamecocks, Kylor? And is their side actually easier for being the lowest seed?
I think surprisingly, yeah, I mean, I think kind of James Madison has the easiest first little couple of games, and it's still not easy by any means. But I think Jacksonville State's is the second easiest. I wouldn't want to play, Weber I wouldn't want to play Weber if I was Jacksonville State. I don't think they match up very well with Weber. Don't think they match up well with South Dakota State. I mean, it's not bad. It's not the easiest, but it's closer to being the easiest than it is the toughest. Sam Houston got the worst draw, man. They got the most difficult road in terms of seeds.
It's going to be tough for those Bearcats. And we're on kind of that seeding discussion, Jamie. Seth Meyer says, change my mind. Why did the committee get it right, seeding James Madison ahead of Delaware? So there you go, man. A chance to defend your Dukes a bit. Seth is a Bison fan, and he thinks that James Madison getting a seed over Delaware is the right call. Tell Seth why he's right.
The overall arching numbers for James Madison are better than Delaware. Our best win is comparable. Richmond and Villanova, maybe. I think if they played Villanova, probably wins, but in a close game. Elon and William Mary and the Cream Puffs we played, notwithstanding. So their schedule a little bit tougher, but both teams won all their games. Both teams won fairly handily, except for our game against Elon. But we also took a knee inside the red zone in that game where we could have gone up 10. We took a knee against Richmond where we could have gone up 24. So we could have piled on, but Signetti didn't. If anybody looked at the overarching stat numbers that I put out, that I reviewed yesterday, I did a bunch of the offensive stats, defensive stats, turnover margin, and I added in strength of schedule. And if you average all of that out, South Dakota State, James Madison. So James Madison was the number 2 team based off of all of the numbers of the stats that I see as critical. Now, somebody else might say, oh, well, you don't have this or you don't have that or you shouldn't have this. But, top 13, top 15 offenses, top 15 defenses. I mean, we stopped the run pretty good against the pass, as is Delaware, don't get me wrong, but our numbers, the overarching full numbers, James Madison's a little bit better than Delaware.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how much confidence people would have against Delaware going to South Dakota State or James Madison having to go to Sam Houston if you hit that semifinal matchup where they're going to have to go travel. Kylor, do you agree that Delaware isn't worthy of that seed? I mean, I think they're worthy of the seed, but do you think that they could have replaced James Madison in the spot they're at?
I think they could have replaced James Madison, but I also think James Madison also deserved to be a seed. When you only have 4 seeds, it's kind of like, guess what? You can pick or choose. That's what I was saying. Weber, if anything, I think resume-wise, not name, not what you had ranked prior, because I agree with Jamie. When the committee put JMU as the number 1, I thought it was a no-brainer. James Madison was going to get a top 2 seed. I thought that was a no-brainer. I thought maybe South Dakota State could jump them with a big win. Other than that, James Madison had it locked. But you know what? Here's kind of a question within that question instead of me answering it. Do you think Delaware is that pissed that they have to go play Sacred Heart? They have to go play potentially JSU instead of playing VMI, instead of potentially playing, Sam Houston, North Dakota State? I'm pretty sure Delaware is pretty damn happy that they didn't get a seed right now.
Yeah,
and it's not to say Jacksonville State's bad or anything like that. I just think if I'm Delaware, what area would I rather be in? I think Delaware is happy in the location that they are at. Maybe they're bummed they're not going to get a couple more home games, but if I'm Delaware, I'm pretty happy compared to wherever other teams at where they could have been.
Man, that's a good point. I mean, at this point, does a seed really matter? You're going to get a home playoff game at best. Then you play at home in the quarters, and then if you're in James Madison's spot, you might travel to Sam Houston. So you're right; it doesn't really matter. Try to get to Brookings in the semifinals and see what happens, as long as South Dakota State continues to win. So yeah, that could be very interesting to see how all of that plays out. But it seemed interesting that there was a lot of defense of Delaware for the auto bid. And everyone was like, I get it. I totally get why they get the auto bid, But man, if they got a seed over JMU, then people would have freaked out. I guess I don't get that mentality, how you could justify, oh, here's why they deserve the auto bid. But if they had gotten the seed, it would have been like, whoa, there's a great injustice towards the Dukes. So that doesn't make sense to me. Does Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong there, if that's two different things.
Well, I might have had a different reaction to the AD vote, which is hogwash and garbage and stupid, if we both had the same amount of conference wins, but Delaware won the conference by a half a game. That's why I want my fan base to just pump the brakes on that. They won the conference by a half a game. It's a weird season. You have to play who's in front of you. They played one more conference game than we did. They won it. We won our games. We're both in the playoffs. It doesn't matter.
Yep, and now we see where it goes from there. And JMU better make the finals, because I loved Coach Signetti's speech, but man, that if they get upset, that is a meme waiting to happen, because I've already got it prepped and ready. So I'll show it to you. I'll show it to you, Frisco, either way. So the Kirby or whatever stuff. Oh yeah, it's ready to go. But I think the Dukes will be just fine. Guys, moving on to Kevin Geeter's question: is this the season South Dakota State makes it to Frisco? What is potentially the tougher opponent for them, Weber or Jacksonville State? So I suppose I have to speak my piece on this, as South Dakota State took the Dakota marker, well-deserved, actually beat North Dakota State in virtually the same fashion as James Madison did in 2016. 17-17 going into the fourth quarter. NDSU had to come back, and ultimately 10 more points put it at 27-17. South Dakota State, who does this sound like I'm describing? Here we go. Massive, huge, bulldozing offensive line that has a ton of experience.
Sacred Heart.
Hands down. Two running backs, lightning and thunder, that'll crush you. A quarterback who wins with mobility but has the passing arm to work within the offense. Skill position players that are underrated but always in position with good downfield blocking. Stout front seven that stops the run. Secondary that doesn't give up the big play. Veteran coaching staff.
Montana.
That's Montana.
Sounds like 2016 James Madison to me.
Yeah, it could. Hey, you could throw that in there. You could and many North Dakota State teams, maybe Montana in the 90s. I'm telling you guys, that South Dakota State team. This is not just because I watched them beat my precious Bison. They're damn good. Holy moly, that offensive line. I haven't seen one that big, that powerful since 2014 Illinois State, 2016 JMU. As soon as I saw them in pregame, I'm like, jeepers, this is no joke. And they were 100% the better team over NDSU. That was crazy. I am easily picking South Dakota State to go to Frisco, especially on their side of the bracket. They're going to be at home the entire time. Pierre Strong is an absolute freak. Good luck to the Open. For anybody in a different conference who maybe doesn't see that type of athlete, good luck going to Brookings and stopping their offense. And Gronowski, that would be, if you want to count his big run there at the end to seal the game, that is his third game-winning drive, if you count that as a game-winning drive. Ice in his veins, was a high school baseball player this time last year. So sorry to go off on a little tangent here, but North Dakota State doesn't even remotely come close to deserve anything after getting beat by who I think is clearly the number one team in the nation. And we'll see who takes them on in Frisco, in my opinion. Do not see them getting beat all the way through. Tougher opponent, probably Jacksonville State, because you're not going to be able to survive a fourth quarter, last second game like Weber has 4 games in a row going into Brookings. What do you think of my assessment there, Kylor? I see you getting a little antsy. How do you feel about South Dakota State? But you've been promoting them, though, as a very balanced team.
I mean, I wasn't getting antsy. I kept burping, but trying to keep it in my throat. As I was leaning backwards, a little bit of beer. I think I've said it all year long that South Dakota State is the best team in the Valley. I think I kind of even said in the preseason, I think they would be the best team in the Valley. I think they have the most talent coming back because North Dakota State did lose a lot in the fall. I thought they would take a down step, and South Dakota State seemed to have everything flowing for them. And I do think they are the best team in the Valley. If you are the best team in the Valley, you have a good shot to be the best team in the FCS. It is what it is. Even though I'm, ranking on the Valley having 5 teams, they're all good teams. Like they all legit could go 4-1 this week because they only play each other. But who's a tougher matchup between, let's say, Weber and Jacksonville State? Here's the deal. UND kind of bullied South Dakota State. Weber has a very similar style as a UND. Just Weber, in my opinion, is more physical, but has a less potent offense, and UND's offense is not potent. So I think Weber can cause SDSU some problems that maybe they haven't seen for a while. But in terms of who is the tougher matchup, Jacksonville State or Weber, probably neither. I think South Dakota State is probably going to be in Frisco this year. They look damn good. Good luck to anyone who has to face them. They look very promising.
And I think it's Jacksonville State. I know I kind of downplay Weber there. Jacksonville State's better, at least against OVC competition. They're good against the run. They can stop the run. And Bob and others have been putting that on the page. So if you have a chance to stop the run against South Dakota State, their quarterback, he's a heck of a player, Gonowski, even though he's a true freshman. But that's going to give you a chance to beat South Dakota State. But you're going to have to get past that big offensive line. So Jamie, initial impressions of South Dakota State. You've always been looking at the opposite side of the bracket at a Bison team, typically, as a Dukes fan in the last 4 years, thinking, all right, this is who we probably will see in Frisco. What do you think about seeing possibly the Jackrabbits coming to face you in Frisco, maybe on the other side?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's how it's lining up, and I know I hate to discount the other 7 teams on that side of the bracket, but it's let me just be a parrot. I mean, that team is balanced. They can run the ball, they can throw when they need to. Their defense is solid. There's not a whole lot of weakness in that team. And sure, if you can make them one-dimensional and force them to pass, you have a better shot, sure. But can anybody do that? Jacksonville State, between those teams, maybe. I mean, like Kylor said, I like Weber's physicality, so I've given you a no answer. I don't think they have a tough matchup until they get to Frisco. And I think it's going to be a good game no matter who they match up with if they get to Frisco, because there's a lot of good teams that could match up with them, even if it's North Dakota State again. I mean, that was not a runaway game. I mean, that game was close late, like you said. And, James Madison's seen them before. It's been a few years. Obviously, teams have turned over, but, that would be an interesting matchup. Sam Houston would be an interesting matchup with their offense. So yeah, I mean, South Dakota State, if they take care of business, they'll be in Frisco, and I don't know how close their games will be before they get there.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. I mean, Southern Illinois, if they beat Weber, lost at home to SDSU 44-3. So I don't know how that gets turned around, but I guess we'll see as it plays out and as we make some predictions towards the end of the pod, guys. Last main question before some quick hits here. Patrick Franks again. Is this Sam Houston's year? Boy, they're going to have to survive that bracket. I've been pumping up. Kylor's been pumping up Sam Houston all year. We feel they're a little bit more balanced. Passing defense, though, statistically, very low on the bottom. Is that a product of the Southland play, or do we have maybe a weakness that could be exposed if a high-flying Eastern Washington steps into Bauer Stadium? What do you think there, Jamie? Is this Sam Houston's year sitting at the number 2 seed?
Well, I think you almost basically just hit it on the head. They better pray that North Dakota State wins that game, because I think Eastern Washington matches up pretty good against them. We'll see if Kylor agrees with me here in a minute, but just the way that they give up chunks in the pass game, and that's what Eastern's good at. I know they've got some team defensive speed that might be able to, keep them, honed in and kind of boxed up, but they better hope NDSU wins that game. I mean, yeah, call me a homer. I think James Madison could beat them in Bauer Stadium, but will they? I don't know. I'm not sure it's their year, though. I think they're good. I think they earned a seed. They're the number 1 team on my ballot, but I don't think I'm going to have them winning.
Patrick, it is their year to get to Frisco because I have a shot bet with Dustin Helton about it, and I would like to get a free shot and be victorious in that. So there's no logic there. I want to win my shot bet. So Sam Houston on my bracket, I have them in the final. I promoted them all year, so I'm going to stick with them in Bauer Stadium, man, to at least make it to the final. Kylor, What do you think, man? Bearcat, we visited that stadium together, man, a few years
Yeah,
ago.
It's a good time.
Maybe we'll see them in Frisco. What do you think? Is it their year?
I mean, the bigger question is, before I get into this, I want to respond to what Jamie said, that Eastern matches up well with them. In the Big Sky Podcast Network, before the whole playoff bracketology came out, I said, here are the 5 teams Eastern Washington's probably going to be paired up in the first round. It was UND, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, Weber, Sam Houston. Those were the 5 teams that I thought would be the most likely Eastern Washington's pairs up, and I picked North Dakota State for most likely. But I listed the teams I'd rather play versus who I didn't. It went UND number 1. It went NDSU number 2, Weber 3, South Dakota State 4, Sam Houston 5. I actually think on paper we do not match up well with Sam Houston at all. I don't think we can keep up with them. We have, I mean, who knows? But I'm not even saying we match up well with North Dakota State either. I think we have a very tough road, and I don't know if we can beat either of them. But in terms of, is it Sam Houston State's year? Here's what I'm going to say. I don't think this year is anything different than what we have seen Sam Houston all decade. They've had fewer down years than they have positive semifinal years. I think every year is a Sam Houston year, and this is not is it Sam Houston's year? This is just Sam Houston. This is what we have come to expect. Sure, they had a few down years, 2 down years or whatever. Sam Houston was always going to find its way back. They are a power. So this isn't Sam Houston's year. This is just Sam Houston. They are back. They are where they should have been. They are where they should have never left. It's just Sam Houston.
Yeah, I love that, because we are Sam Houston defenders in terms of their overall resume, and we feel mostly that it's unfair in terms of a few semifinal blowouts of how that plays. So,
but they won't win the title.
Right. They have 5 semifinals in this decade.
right.
2 title game appearances, no titles. But list the other teams that have 5 semifinals in the last decade without saying North Dakota State.
Yep.
It's a short list, and they're on it.
Sam Houston,
Eastern Washington.
right. 2 title appearances since 2011. Winning overall in their entire history, winning playoff record versus every conference -2. One of those conferences, it's because they're 500 with them. The other one's the Missouri Valley, and 4 of those losses are to NDSU. So that's an outlier. That NDSU has done that to everybody in the last decade.
And look at NDSU's winning record versus the Missouri Valley too. It's like 98%.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you want to say Sam Houston, they could never beat NDSU. Well, it seems like the Valley up until now couldn't do it either. So it's going to be interesting. So we will see, Patrick, how it plays out. Patrick also, guys, has the first question in our quick hit segment here for the evening. He says, who starts for the Bison Saturday? As Patrick Frakes is a big Eastern Washington fan. It was admitted by Matt Entz. Today he said he's not sure who's going to start, but Matt Entz has said that all spring. He said in the post-game conference their plan for South Dakota State was to Zeb come out on the first possession, and then Cam was taking the rest of the game. Not sure. I mean, I don't mind that strategy. Make South Dakota State think it's going to be a heavy dose of Zeb with a sprinkle of Cam, which they've seen all year, and then completely flip the script on him. But I think you're going to see Cam Miller play the rest of the way out. Cam Miller looked, he doesn't look maybe Gronowski-like, but he looked pretty dang good. He was slinging the ball and he can run. So I think Eastern will see Cam Miller. And Kylor, you have said that Eastern maybe struggles a little bit more against mobile quarterbacks, and if they're doing their research, that should give them a little bit of an edge, I think.
Yep. Yeah. That's it.
All right, man. Yeah. Hey, Kylor, this one's for you from Victor Jr. He says, are you rooting for Sam Houston this week so you can make a return to Huntsville? And then who would you rather have the Bearcats play live? Would you rather see your Eagles go play the Bearcats, or would you rather see the Bison maybe come down and lose to Sam Houston? What would be your dream scenario if you're going to go travel to a Sam Houston home game in the quarters?
Yeah, I'm not traveling for a North Dakota State game for anything unless it's Frisco, just because we already have our plans made. Yeah, Victor, man, I'm hoping Eastern Washington beats North Dakota State, and we get to come down to Huntsville, and then you and I will tailgate again and have a couple beers, have a good time.
Heck yeah, man. So Chris Edmonds says, assuming Sam Houston loses in round 2 and JMU advances, would JMU host in the semis, or does it depend on the bids to host that were submitted? Just for some intel, guys, on how this works, and to answer Chris's question, the seeds will always host. So 1 seed would host a 2, a 1 seed would host the 4, the 2 would host the 3, vice versa. And when it comes to non-seeded teams facing each other, it goes up to bids that were submitted by the teams, money given to the NCAA. Those bids were put in a few weeks ago, and then that will determine who gets the home game. So if you spent more cash, you're going to get a home game. But the predetermined sites could come into play with this. That is what's interesting here a little bit, is if James Madison gets bounced in round one, let's say that, and VMI,
say that.
let's say VMI advances and Missouri State advances, they are not part of the predetermined 14 sites right now, and they will play each other. So do they then go to Bridgeforth? I mean, that's gonna maybe an inconvenient spot, but there's other places they could go. They could go to Bridgeforth and play the quarterfinal game because their home stadiums aren't preset. So it's going to be interesting, but mostly it's the bidding and the seeds that'll determine things. And I think they had some foresight with the committee when they set these things up. So, guys, our final one's here from Brandon Owens. He wants to know, did Jacksonville State get bounced by Delaware in the quarters? I say we're not going to answer that right now because we'll predict that next week and we'll see what happens. But he does want to know, if Jacksonville State makes it to Frisco, how crazy do you think he's going to get? What do you think there, Jamie? Do you think Cocky Nation's going to go? You think he's going to be over the top, get arrested, break stuff? What's going to happen if Brandon Owens ends up in Frisco, man?
No, he's going to be a teacher. He's going to be calm. He'll be fine.
He got you there, Brandon. You'll end up in detention yourself, man, if you get too out of line in Frisco. And he wants to say there are 14 sites for the playoffs. Will the games past the first round not be hosted by the higher seed team? So we're going to answer that here in a few minutes, Brandon, in terms of our predictions, if we see who's going to be advancing and if any seeds get upset. So final one.
Can I only say one thing? If JSU makes it, because Brandon's going to be in Frisco. Matt, Chris, we're going to be in Frisco. Brandon, if JSU makes it, you better believe we're going to go crazy. And I am going to make you drink with me. Anytime I sip, you are going to take a sip. Anytime I take a shot, you're going to take a shot. We're going to see how Cocky Nation gets. So I'm rooting for JSU on that side of the bracket. Let's get to Frisco, buddy.
Plus, Kylor made red shots last year and for the Eastern game. So, I mean, if Cocky Nation is down there, you might as well just keep on the trajectory and stick with the red ones. So keeps it easy for you, man. Don't have to switch up that recipe. And speaking of drinks, guys, final question, quick hit here. What will be the drinks of choice in Frisco of the FCS Fans Nation tailgate when we get down to Frisco? What do you think, Kylor? What will be the drink of choice, my man?
So I only really have
Hall Jones. Hall Jones asked that.
I only really have 3 drinks of choice for tailgating anyway. For one, I will make the famous Jello shots just because that is what it is.
Whoop, whoop.
If you guys like Jello, this is not a shot for you. There is no Jello. Wife. Yeah, her face was great. Other than that, since it's football and you want to drink heavy, a light beer is always a good option. But I will have my bottle of Jameson. I will be drinking Jameson, probably chasing my Jameson with some beer, probably chasing my beer with some Jameson. But those are going to be the 3 drinks of choice, plus whatever someone else has. Like some of those NDSU fans, man, they had some drinks I've never heard of. And they weren't strong. They were delicious though. And I'll drink all of those too. Let's have a giant melting pot in my belly. Let's go.
I thought the right answer was whatever somebody puts in your hand.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not picky.
Hey, I'm gonna go with a summer beer because this may be the only time ever I get a summer championship for FCS football. So give me a Leinenkugel summer shanty, baby. It's gonna be mid-May. It's time for the sun to come out and the birds to sing. So I'm gonna go with a summer beer down there. Guys, that wraps up all the questions we had from our fans. Steve Anderson was the only one we missed, but we're gonna bring him here at the end. He says, who wins the first round games? Who wins the title game? Who gets upset first round? He wants to know everything. Steve, we're just going to go the first round tonight. We're going to go game by game throughout the bracket here and do our predictions. If you guys have adamant disagreement, feel free to counter somebody, but we'll just go one at a time across the board. And Jamie, I will start with you, my man. Let's make it interesting. We'll just start with the 1 seed, South Dakota State with Holy Cross. That's going to be in Brookton, South Dakota. Give us a score prediction and a winner there, Jamie, for game 1, South Dakota State, Holy Cross.
It's a snoozer, 55-7, South Dakota State.
I don't think you're going to get much pushback on that. So SDSU for us advancing. All right, Kylor, Southern Illinois and Weber, man. We've talked about this one back and forth. We've thrown hints on what we think. Weber will host the game. Do this Jeremiah Rash does he get his Salukis a victory? What do you think, man?
This is like the one of two games I'm actually torn up on. I
Mhm.
think if it was outside of Ogden, I think Southern Illinois wins 60% of the time. When it's in Ogden, Weber's a tough place to play. In the mountains, it's tough, especially if you're not used to it. The good news is it's not going to be winter in the mountains. That's a positive news for Southern Illinois. But that elevation is a little bit of a key factor. I think this is literally, out of all the games on there, the only 50-50 game. I know I've said this the whole podcast, and I'm going to contradict what I've said throughout the whole podcast. Weber wins 24-21, but I would not be surprised if Southern Illinois wins this game. That I think it's stylistically, it's not a great matchup for Weber. I think being in Ogden and in the mountains will help them.
I think you're right. I think you're looking at a 3 to 7 point game. Nobody's getting away in that one.
And I'm going to go opposite of you, Kylor. I just think I've tweeted this before. I think Eastern's the best team in the Big Sky. And I think Weber goes down the equal round of Eastern, or Eastern goes further than them. SIU proved they can win in a shootout against SELA, proved they could shut down NDSU. Can't explain their trip ups like a 3-point loss to Missouri State or getting blasted by South SDSU, but I like Southern Illinois to win that game. Yeah, by 7 points or something. So we'll be split up on that one. Moving on, guys. Delaware with Sacred Heart. I make my prediction. I'm going to be just like that South Dakota State game. One of those auto bids I got in there. Congratulations to you, Sacred Heart. You've had a good year. But Delaware is going to win that one. I'll say something like 38-10. Just keep it simple. So pretty sure we're going to be all on the same page for the Blue Hens on that one.
Yep. Keep your eye on Julius Chestnut of Sacred Heart, though. That's a good running back. I actually voted him number 2, I believe. No, number 2 or 3 in my Peyton ballot. I don't remember.
Awesome. Good intel. We'll see if he can do some damage for the Blue Hens. I think Delaware advances. So far, so good. Jamie, what do you think, man? Jacksonville State hosting Davidson.
Another one that I don't think is close. All Davidson does is run the ball. All Jacksonville State does is stop the run.
Yeah.
And
good. That's
it's power on power, but Jacksonville State's power is better. So let's go Jacksonville State 41, Davidson 10.
good stuff. I think we all agree. Kylor, Sam Houston, man, I'm going to give you this one could be a little tricky here. Monmouth, who played well against Kennesaw, going to Sam Houston. What do you think about that matchup in Bauer Stadium as we move to the other side?
Yeah, so we've seen a couple different Sam Houstons this year. One that actually absolutely blows out teams, and some that play close and competitive games. I mean, I have a hard time thinking that Sam Houston State can't stop Monmouth more than Monmouth can stop Sam Houston State. So, even though Monmouth is probably better than what a lot of people are giving him credit for, I just don't think they can keep up with a Sam Houston State. So I'm going to go Sam Houston State wins 44, Monmouth 28.
Good stuff. North Dakota State and Eastern Washington. Guess it lands on the unbiased buys and admin. I would be shocked in a world where we live, where I think everyone else is a little shocked right now. Wow, NDSU is not a seed, but 2 losses in a row, both at home, to me seems really trippy. Not a lot of preparation time. I think EB3 is going to run all over the field. I think Eastern's going to be able to put up points. I question if Eastern's going to be able to stop the run stout enough to where NDSU is just going to hold the ball and go down the field. I'll take North Dakota State 38-27 for Eastern. So I actually think both teams are going to score a lot. I don't think NDSU is going to just be able to shut Eastern down. Kylor, push back on me a little bit here, man. What do you think?
Well, here's the deal. North Dakota State is by far the worst offense Eastern Washington has ever seen. Probably not ever seen in just this year, but like ever seen ever. They're that bad. I'm just joking a little bit, but you were saying, Eastern's going to have a tough time stopping the run. Not one true running back has ran over 75 yards against Eastern Washington this year.
Damn, that's awesome.
Now, quarterbacks are a different thing. If Cam
he held back, he's like,
and maybe it's 80 yards or something like that, but definitely no one's ran over 100 yards in a true running back fashion. But our defensive line is young, and if Zeb is playing, I think Eastern Washington absolutely beats the brakes off of NDSU. I don't think NDSU has a good offense with Zeb, but Eastern Washington's defensive line, they're young, even though they're talented. But once you have a mobile quarterback who can switch up and change things on a dime, our defensive line does not make good adjustments. So that's why I'm saying if Cam Miller's playing, which I think he will, our defensive line is going to scramble a lot. And I don't think NDSU's running backs are going to have a phenomenal game. If NDSU wins, it's because Cam Miller was able to make some misdirections. They were able to confuse our defensive line. But Eastern Washington has probably the biggest receivers NDSU will have to face. They probably have the most athletic offense NDSU will have to face. I think this is a 50-50 game. I want to pick Eastern Washington.
Do it. Do it. Do it.
Do it.
Yeah. Eastern
Just
Washington, 37, NDSU 2.
I will.
No, I think it's going to be. I think it's going to be a 3-point game either way. And this is actually one of those games I don't feel comfortable picking. It is weird. Maybe it'll be 34-31 Eastern, or it'll be 34-31 NDSU. I think this is a pick'em game. I think both strengths. NDSU's strengths are Eastern's weaknesses. Eastern's strengths are NDSU's weaknesses. I have no clue what's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm with you, man. It could be 50-50. Jamie, just split us quick here with a 10-second prediction. NDSU or Eastern Washington, man?
I don't think this game gets in the 30s because, like you said, I think North Dakota State's going to try to slow the game down with the run game, and Eastern Washington can do those quick strikes. So it's going to be a quick back and forth. I do think it's a close game. 27-24-ish either way, 24-21, kind of like we were talking. Give me, don't have my other hat, but give me the Eagles.
Should be a fun one, guys. We'll see how it plays out. All right, Jamie, Missouri State and UND. Winner possibly comes to James Madison based off Kylor's prediction. So who do you think, man? Does UND win there at home?
Yeah, I think they do. We've been seeing it all year. North Dakota is a different team at the O'Leary Center versus everywhere else. If they get the matchup against Missouri State that got postponed a couple times, I think they probably win 30-20.
UND's last game being March 20th, I believe, against NDSU, have not played in over 5 weeks. I also would be shocked to see them lose. Missouri State, great spring for you so far, but I think we're all going to stick with UND on this one.
Nope, Kylor, don't be a jerk like Chris.
Kylor, you going with the Bears?
I'm going with Missouri State, and it's not because I think Missouri State's a better team than UND. I just think UND is going to be very rusty. They, by far, in all the playoff teams, they have not played in a very long time, like you just admitted. Like I said earlier in the podcast, it's been a month. I think they're not going to be as aggressive, and I also think it's UND. Now, it is also Missouri State. These are the battle of two teams that I don't care about. But, yeah, I think Missouri State is actually going to win this game.
I actually think that someone from the Valley in that game will win, and I personally believe someone will actually lose, but that's probably just not me. James Madison VMI, Kylor, last one here, man. How do you think that game plays out? Do the Dukes get the dub?
Well, I already know who Jamie's going to pick because he's been riding this team high all season, and it is VMI. VMI has been Jamie's dog.
This is Jamie's team.
This is one of those games. Don't change your mind now, Jamie.
Yeah, he loved
VMI till I die.
To be like me with Furman.
Yeah, this is Furman, but an actual good team. It
hurts.
Okay, so no, Dukes all the way. I don't think the Dukes are the same Dukes as the past, but they're still the same Dukes when they play JMU or VMI, not Jamie Williams. Yeah, JMU 28, VMI 7.
Yeah, not going to get a lot of pushback there.
No, I think hey. I never would have thought, honestly, when I first called it, that VMI would actually win the Southern Conference. But, hey, it works out every now and then, and I look really smart now. I've been on them. Scott Wackenheim is my number one on my ballot for the Eddie Robinson Award. But, let's be real. They're coming to Bridgeforth. You don't win there unless you're Kurt Cignetti, and he always wins there. But, yeah, 28-7 sounds about right. They've got a good offense. They'll probably score more than 7. Maybe they'll get 14. They'll be throwing the ball around. But I trust our defense. Yeah, it's a Dukes win.
There you go. And to answer some of those questions for Steve Anderson and Brandon and a few others, in this situation, no seeds go down, and we just advance on to the quarters. So, Jamie, Kylor, thank you so much for joining me tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, whether it's the morning, afternoon, or evening, thank you for catching the FCS Fans Nation podcast. Make sure to give us a like, give us a rating, subscribe, whatever platform you use. Make sure you join us on our Facebook page. The playoff bracket challenge is going on now. Make sure that you get on our Facebook page and submit a bracket under the official announcement post for a chance to win a free team hat of your choice. The deadline is the end of business here on Thursday. So, guys, we are rolling into the first weekend, and we will see who joins the Elite Eight as somebody like myself, I have bought my plane ticket to Frisco, so I'll be flying down there. Now let's see which 8 teams still have a chance to punch their ticket to the national title game. Thanks for joining me again, gentlemen. Everybody else, stay safe and enjoy the first round of the playoffs. Have a good one, everyone. Boom. All right, let's complain about some Valley teams.